Yay. So also, I started uploading your videos after class on Tuesday. They just went through last night sometime. I don't know what's going on with the network here at school, but it is extraordinarily slow uploading these videos, and I apologize for that. The schedule page now has last class's video on it. I usually shoot for a 24-hour turnaround. It looks more like it might be a 48 until I can figure out why it's taking so long. So apologies for that. Anyway, we did a card exercise where you guys pulled cards out of the deck, took a look, and I said you could leave if you got a red card. And what happened?
No, I got a red
You
card.
didn't. How many trials? Five. Well, we can definitely call that 5. There's no question about 5, because each of you did a trial. We can assume all those trials were independent. We can assume they all have a meaning of one trial. Time isn't an issue. And then, what did you say? After 3,
Shenanigans.
after 3 I heard fake! And after 5 I stopped, because I think you were all pretty well convinced that the deck was fake. Tell me your name again. Eric, you saw me in Grandview right afterwards. Like, tell me again, was that neck fake? I'm like, I don't know. Population. I walked away from it. I walked away from it. I didn't answer.
Yeah, it was a little suspicious.
A little suspicious. Good. Thank you. So basically, what you have is you've got this deck of cards you know nothing about except what you were able to see from a sample. Boom. That's where it becomes inferential. So let's go through the possibilities, because this is kind of what the whole course is. Either the deck is fair or the deck is not fair. Those are the two options. I told you, here's a deck of cards, and then I had you guys describe that deck of cards by saying, what's in it, right? And Lindsay said it's got 4 suits. And somebody else said it's got 2 colors, 2 cards. We had it all described very, very well. That's a fair deck, fair poker deck. Not fair is anything other than a fair poker deck. And I think, Eric, your claim was that they were all black. And I said, can we make a more careful claim?
Well, what would have happened if we did get a red, though?
Which you didn't.
Would we skip the whole lesson, though? That's why I think it was fake.
But you didn't. Let's not deal with hypotheticals, bro. Let's deal with what actually happened. I really want Congress to have more than a 9% approval rating. What if everybody said they liked Congress and everybody says they suck, right? We deal with what we got. We deal with our data whether we like it or not, right?
Fair enough.
Fair enough, sir. Okay, so here's the deal. The top line represents the truth. One of those two things is the truth, and they're mutually exclusive from each other. These are the claims you guys can make. And you guys definitely made that claim by the end of the day, right? Nobody was saying the deck appears fine, even though it could be. It could be totally fine. It might be completely bogus. We don't know. All we got is a sample. So, here's the problem. If the deck is fair, and you don't know if it is or not, and you say it's not, that's what we call a false positive. You might remember this from 243. I know the last project you guys did in my 243 class dealt with false positives. False negatives were right. Yeah, that was a great project. Really enjoyed that one, thanks. I don't know if Donna's classes did or not, but false positives and false negatives are important. I got a false positive on a thyroid test about a year ago when the doctor's like, hey, your thyroid's off the chart, we gotta start getting you on thyroid medicine. I'm like, that's for life, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, why don't we test again before you get me on medicine for the rest of my life? He's like, well, why? And I'm like, because you did 20 tests, and they all came back negative except for this one. This one came back positive. And judging on not just the test result, but also like my physical presentation isn't agreeing with the test result. So I'm suspect of the test result. And it was amazing watching his eyes open. He's like, oh God, that makes perfect sense. And that made me nervous. And the doctor was like, oh my God, you understand a false positive, and I don't. And that makes me nervous that how many people go to doctors and get false positives and believe them and act on them and maybe are getting on medicine they don't need. I'm not saying doctors are bad people, please, don't hear that. I'm saying that when those false positives occur, if we don't at least have some kind of an idea of recognizing that, and that's blind statistics. Positive test result means you have the disease. Not necessarily, right? You might be just fine. You might not have the disease, all right? Okay, if you do, then your deck is stacked. But if you don't, that means your deck is fair. But the problem with that is you could get a false positive. You could be totally fine, and the test says you're not. That's where you have to look at non-statistical stuff. And in that case, his thyroid test said I should have been gaining weight, being sluggish, and I had just gotten done telling him I can't sleep because I'm so wired. and I have to do these 80-mile bike rides on the weekend to tire myself out to sleep. It's like, yeah, but I think your thyroid's too low. I'm like, okay, let's go through the discussion again. Okay? And then after about 10 minutes, he's like, okay, I totally get what you're getting at now. But it's like it's not in their training, in their medical training, which I think it will be. I know nursing students now need to take 243, and I hope that's a sign of trickle up. I hope that's a sign of trickle up to the doctors. Okay? Suppose the deck is fair, and you say the deck is fair. Yay! That's right. Does anybody know what that's called? A true what? It's going to sound kind of weird, but it's a true positive or negative. It's a true negative, actually. Because what you're trying to do, a positive test result would imply something's wrong. Think of it like that. When you take a disease test, and you test positive, it means you have the disease, which is undesirable. So if you say the deck is fair and the deck actually is, that means nothing's wrong. You said negative, true negative. Does that make sense? We'll come back to that, I promise. Don't memorize that right now. We'll come back to that. Okay? Suppose the deck is not fair, and you say the deck is not fair. That's a true positive. Because you said it was sketchy, and it is sketchy. That's a true positive, and you're right. And you're right. And the last will be the false negative, which means the deck is skewed. The deck is skewed, and you missed it. You said it was not skewed. So you got a false positive and a false negative. These two guys here and these two guys here have to each sum to 100%. You want to remember that from 243. You probably know that's okay too. We'll come back to that in this class. And the error analysis we'll deal with in here is important, and I want to make sure we get that. So what I want to do now is I want to bump out of here, and I want to readdress one of Cassie's points from yesterday. I actually had this. I ended up pulling up the coins one yesterday. I had this one all ready to go. Cassie, I believe it was Cassie, you said, but there's clumping in randomness. There's clumping. So what's wrong with seeing 5 black cards in a row? Right? What's wrong? I mean, let me kill the links. I mean, I look up there and I see 5 black cards in a couple different places, don't you? Right? It's right in the middle there, right there, numbers 2 through whatever that is, 2 through 9, down there in the bottom row. Okay, you guys see 5 black cards in a row right now? Anywhere?
Yeah. Several spots.
That
Yeah.
was the problem, right? It's not a problem that we saw 5 black cards. It's a problem that we saw them right off the bat. Watch those first 5 cards. You ready? There's 5 red ones, but we didn't have that problem. We had 5 black ones. Now, can they all be 5 black cards in the beginning? Could it happen? Of course. What was the likelihood?
3%.
Very nice. Remember, we calculated it. We said it's going to happen about 3% of the time. If I keep doing it, you'll actually see it. Oh, we don't have to do it. We did it yesterday. We actually did it yesterday with the cumulative curve. We did it for like 10,000 trials. And it was 3% of the time, so I can save myself the effort of doing it right now. So here's the deal. Since it only happens 3% of the time, we called it an outlier. It could happen. It could happen, which means if I run this experiment over and over and over again in all my classes until I reach higher, and that deck is fair, would I get 5 black cards every once in a while? Define every once in a while?
3% of the time.
3% of the time. And then you'd all be going, deck's fixed! I'd be like, okay, say the deck's fixed, that's totally fine. You can't see it anyway. Sorry. You can't see it. But I love it because it's real. Because you don't know the population. But the problem is that you see it and you say, okay, it's fixed, and that's my claim. There's a 3% chance I'm wrong, if you will. It might be right, and I'm saying it's not, and that's going to happen 3% of the time, and that's acceptable by statistical standards. I want to kind of do an overview. You don't need that right now. I want to do an overview of the course. This is a lot to look at, but I don't know any better way of doing it than this, and I think you'll get the point once you see it. Forget the cards. The cards serve their purpose. They're wonderful. Look at. Let me start the video again too. This is a good place to.